Oh, hello. Hello, friends. Welcome back to my channel. My name's Ashley Ariana. Hi, Tom. How are you?
I'm doing well, Ashley. How are you?
I'm doing really good. It's like 103 degrees out here where I'm at
Oh,
right now, so it's really hot. And I confused myself because in all the grocery stores, the world thinks that it's like fall now. Although I hate fall. I like love the summertime and I'm
right.
never trying to shorten that. But I do really like eggnog and I like pumpkin spice things. And so there was a coconut milk eggnog and a pumpkin spice almond milk. And I bought both. And I think they both have a lot of sugar in them. And I drank a good amount of both of those. And then also made myself an acai bowl because it is 100 degrees outside.
Right.
Um, so I'm full of energy.
Okay.
Uh, but
That's
yeah,
good.
besides that, I'm excited to be here with you. 49ers
Me
got a
too.
win as they should have. I don't know if it was as dominant. Maybe before we get into all the topics of the show, how was your expectation? Was your expectation of the game met? Did you feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they
Because
did what they
they
should have done?
they have a long way to go in execution. So I think that we need to give them a long leash and say they've got a long ramp up period to go. So we
Okay.
can't expect them to go all the way through that ramp and then say, okay, here we are. We're now arrived. We're ready for the year. We're back to the Super Bowl NFC Championship team, and they're not. But it helps to have a sparring partner like New England that isn't that good, but allows you to work through the motions so that you can get your execution up to a higher level. And I think that it helped them in terms of their confidence and their rhythm and their identity to play against New England and start to move toward the team they need to be.
Yeah, gets the ball rolling. I feel like
Yeah.
when you lose to that Rams team, it starts putting this doubt, at least as a fan, in my head. Like if you can lose to that Rams team, then you can lose to the Patriots, and if you can lose to the Patriots, then you can lose to the Cardinals. But inversely, once you beat the Patriots, it's like, okay, the defense looked back, and I think that that might be overselling it. We actually,
It
I don't
is.
know how good or how bad this defense is. They haven't performed up to expectations for me so far. They
Yeah.
looked really dominant against the Patriots, but in my opinion, as they should.
Right.
Going against this Cardinals team, I think will be this upcoming Sunday will be a little bit more of a test for them because Kyler and the wide receiver over there, I think present different challenges that New England just really, really struggled on all fronts. Um, but I do think it gets the ball rolling where they can start stacking the wins that they should be getting because they
Right.
do have kind of a gauntlet later on in the season. Some of the teams that they're playing, in my opinion, have much more physical and tough defenses, more creative offenses than they've seen. And so you have to start getting these easy wins just to end up in the correct seating. I mean, you want to be the Seahawks just lost, so that's good. They although
That
I will
helps.
say I felt like the Seahawks and the Lions both look good. Geno still doesn't scare me. I don't know if that's just
Yeah.
49ers bias.
Yeah.
Um,
Gino is always Gino. He'll get stats, but not wins.
yeah.
And so that's the thing with him.
You said that yesterday on
But
Twitter. I agree with that.
yeah, yeah. But we have to also remember that last night Seattle didn't have any of their starting defensive linemen. All four were hurt. So that's
Oh,
part of why Detroit had 42.
that and same thing with why I do want to be hesitant about I know Fred Warner after the game, and I expect players to do this. I'm not like down on him, but he said, we're so back, baby. And in that same facet, the Patriots were missing almost all of their offensive linemen. Their center was a rookie center that they were starting. So I'm excited that they did
Well, yeah.
well, but they still made errors that, in my opinion, kept the Patriots in the game. And I don't know if they would have won that game against a better team. Now, I'm glad that they won because you need to stack wins. I hope that this helps with their confidence going forward
Yeah.
into these next games just to start getting the ball rolling. But I do think it's too soon to say, this team all the problems are fixed and this team is the same
Yeah.
defense that
Plus you have to factor in that it's New England. I mean,
yeah.
even when healthy, this is the worst offensive line in football. So the defense saying, "We're back, baby." Yeah, against that offensive line, anybody is back. So you have to factor
You
that
better
in.
that would have been even more problems. Really quickly, Daniel says, "Hi everyone, happy Tuesday." Hi
Yeah,
Daniel, always in here. JD I think says that this win was good, especially for the defense. We'll get into all of the injuries and roster moves in 1 second, but what does scare me is the standout and highlight on this defense, not just this last game, but all year so far, has been Fred Warner, and he is day to day with that ankle injury.
yeah,
Um, During the game, the announcers made it sound like because they were up, I think at the time it was to 27 to like 3 or something. It was not good to start the third quarter. I thought that they were just holding Fred out for precautionary reasons. But then after the game, Fred did say that he tried to go and couldn't, and that if he
right.
could have gone, he would have gone. So that did scare me. Now they
It's a
ran
little
tests
bit
and
more than what we're kind of being led to believe on him. That
yeah,
I think
yeah,
it really is sort of a 50-50 call on if he's going to play this week or not.
yeah, yeah. So that kind of scares me. And then really quickly, um, Fatty Momo, hilarious name, says practice 4 games is over. Everyone should be sped up by now. Time to play some real ball and beat these division foes. I agree with
Yeah,
what you're saying, but I hate the idea that like the first 4 games were just practice. Like I've heard some people refer to September as just being like a warm up month. Every time that the 49ers have made the Super Bowl, they've started out fast. And every time that they've had a slow start, they've made it to the playoffs, but not farther. And obviously, every game is its own, or every year season is its own season. And, we have these data points, but it doesn't actually mean anything for how they're going to perform in the playoffs this year. But
right.
I do, I feel like they already don't take the preseason seriously. They don't need to start not taking September seriously. Like, in my opinion,
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
it
Come on,
does
guys.
matter.
It's the season's begun.
Yeah.
Let's go. So yeah, but I get what he's saying that because everybody signed so late, with Ayuk and with Trent,
Yeah,
that
Trent.
the first 4 weeks ended up being sort of like a camp.
I agree. I agree with it. That makes sense. Like all these guys who maybe were relying on not having an off season as the reason they weren't in football shape, now should be the time that you're ready to execute and play to the best of
Yeah,
your ability. I can get behind that. Now, with the injury updates, it came out turns out it was actually on Friday. John Lynch had said something on KNBR, which is so interesting because I do usually listen to that on my drive, and I don't know how I missed it. But Christian McCaffrey has bilateral Achilles tendonitis, which sounds terrible for
it
him.
is.
And what most surprised me was the fact that we hadn't really heard about this until after the game. Matt Mayoka went on his podcast, and we know that Christian McCaffrey went to Germany, but everything that had been reported on so far, I thought was just pertaining to the one leg that had Achilles tendonitis. Now, as a former athlete, I do know like when you're trying to push yourself to participate on an injured leg. I didn't have Achilles tendonitis, but I did have a fractured shin. And I actually ended up fracturing my other shin because
Because it
you
was
have a couple options.
overcompensating.
One is to
Yeah,
like actually sit out and rest and let it heal. But a lot of times athletes, and especially these professional athletes that are getting paid to perform and just also, they think they owe it to themselves, their team, whatever. I think Christian McCaffrey is a professional in that way, and he wants to be out there and playing. But when you're going to push it on an injured leg, the issue that you end up with is either A, you will utilize that injured leg and you can end up popping your Achilles, or both consciously and unconsciously, just because you're in pain, you're going to start relying on your other leg way more. And you've been walking around your whole life with, if you're like 240 pounds, with like 120 pounds on one leg, and all of a sudden you're favoring that leg. And that's going to put so much more strain when you're going through your rehab, your exercises, trying to push yourself to your body to do what you used to be able to do. And
yeah,
according to Kyle Shanahan yesterday, who did speak, it was during that rehab process that somehow the Achilles tendonitis spread. I don't know. Kyle wasn't um, very great, in my opinion, at letting us know when the second injury occurred, how bad it was. He just said, yeah, he's had Achilles tendonitis in both his legs. He had it in one at one point. It spread to the other, and that's where we're at right now. Now Trent Williams did just talk today and said that he has spoken to Chris McCaffrey, who said that the trip to Germany and the procedure that he had has helped a lot. He plans to be out there very soon. I know that Kyle Shanahan had recently said that they were going to try to amp Christian McCaffrey up coming off of his IR, which is, I think, next week is when that ends. I
Yep.
would strongly suggest to not do that, especially if while trying to I don't think he's giving himself enough time to actually rest and recover. He just
Agreed.
seemingly goes maybe until there's not too much pain and then tries to push himself again and then immediately re-aggravates his injury.
Exactly. Exactly. You can't rush a process like this because then
No.
the chances of re-injury are too high.
Yeah, it's
Um,
terrifying.
so let's go through all of this and sort of try to break it down. So the German process, as I understand it, was stem cell injection.
Yeah.
And so that is to reduce the inflammation and speed up the body's process in its ability to heal. So it sends more blood to the injured area. And that's what the Regenikine therapy did for Kobe Bryant when he did this when he hurt his knee. He had an arthritic knee, and the therapy rushed blood to his knee, and he got a lot better, a lot really fast. It worked for him. And so
Okay.
that's something that we should take away from this is that this therapy worked for Kobe. Now, not in terms of an Achilles, but it's still the same concept. It's send blood to the injured area to help it heal faster.
Yeah.
And hopefully that worked in that Christian finally saw something that actually changed. Because the thing that I think he went to Germany was he was stuck. Nothing was happening. He wasn't
Yeah.
getting better. He wasn't getting worse. He's just stuck. And so that's why he went to Germany. And now he had the Regenikine therapy. Hopefully it worked, and we'll see. But it's still something that takes a lot of time to recover from. And given his injury history, you also have to worry about just his chances for re-injury given his entire past. He's always
He's
had this problem.
28.
And
He
so
has a
this
ton of
problem
tread
speaks
on
to
his tires.
right.
He's suffered with
A lot of
season
tread.
season-ending injuries before.
Yep.
He's put a lot of tread on his tires even since those injuries. And
Yep.
now he's seemingly had 6 months or more than that to recover from this injury, but instead of actually just halting his training or trying to push himself to go full football go again, instead of doing that for the last 6 months, feels like he rests for 2 weeks and then tries again and then is wondering why he's constantly re-aggravating it and not actually able to perform. Like someone higher up should, I mean, and it's body autonomy and everything, but the 49ers have guaranteed money on Christian McCaffrey even next year.
Yeah.
So
Right.
if I was higher up, I'd strongly suggest shutting it down at least until the playoffs and just tell him
Well, or
take
a
it
little
out of
bit
his mind.
before. But yeah.
Yeah.
Because you want him to ramp up so that he's ready for the playoff game. So
Yeah.
I would want to bring him back like week 14, week 15, something like that.
Yeah.
And we talked about that last time, was
But
that he
that's so much
should
different
time it
than
to give
telling
himself football shape and get in a rhythm and get confidence in his feet so that he's okay. So
but
he's got to go
obviously
through
that's
all of that. But
yeah.
the other thing that I wanted to bring up, I got a friend that's a therapist in Austin, works with professional athletes. And
Okay.
part of what he does is postural therapy, where it's your posture can promote an injury because you're not aligned correctly.
Okay.
That Christian has this problem in both ankle or both Achilles indicates strongly that there's a positional flaw in the way that he runs that creates the Achilles problem. Posturally, he's not sound, and
That makes sense.
that's part of what's causing this. So when Christian runs, he's going to make it worse because the posture's wrong and it injures the area in and of itself.
Yeah,
Then you have what
putting
you
more
talked
strain.
about where you compensate for it in
Yeah.
other muscles or the other foot. He can't do that. So what he needs first is why he went to Germany is that he has to have the blood going to the injured area to help it heal. And that gives him a new baseline and a basis to then start light workouts. But if he has postural problems that are causing the problem, he'll get injured again right away. He
Yeah.
has to solve the posture problem. And
That's
here's
kind
one
of
of the cool
interesting, like
things with the
finding out.
Niners. Yeah,
I know
yeah,
you touched on this in your article, but like, why did this happen?
yeah,
And that's an important, like, if you want to prevent future injury, things like understanding where the stem from, understanding why maybe so far the rehab process hasn't worked out for him. All those things need to be addressed for him to make a full recovery and be able to perform at his, elite status this,
right.
whether it's this year or just in his career in general. Because if these things aren't addressed, it sounds dramatic, but Chris McCaffrey's NFL career might be over if he has the like a tendonitis is something that can be re-aggravated very easily. It's
Easily.
not like a broken bone where it breaks and then
Right.
once you heal, it's healed. It's like it can consistently be aggravated once your body reaches that performance again, or that level
Or
of like
that
pushing
level of
yourself,
usage.
unless you make the proper adjustments. So like
Right.
you're saying, um if it's something with his posture, if it's the amount that he just the amount of targets and pressure he's been putting on his body at this age, like that's also something you have to look at, is maybe he just can't do what he could do at 24 going into, 28, 29.
Well, plus factoring in the mileage that he's put in a lot of carries. And
Yeah.
he made the push last year. I mean, he wanted to get that extension. He's a highly competitive athlete. He wanted to do everything he possibly could. He would wave off running backs that were coming in to replace him. So he had a higher workload than he should have. Kyle allowed that to happen because Kyle wants what's best for his offense and best for his team, and that's
Yeah.
Christian on the field every possible moment. But now they're in this situation. And what my friend had to say was that Christian throughout his career has had this Achilles problem. So it again speaks to the postural issue is what needs to be fixed. And
Okay.
what's unique is the Niners are the only team in pro sports that has a postural therapist from Agascu. John Lynch is from La Jolla. The postural therapy was invented by a Marine from Del Mar. He invented this whole technique, this whole process of evaluating the body. So Lynch had this when he was a player in Tampa, and he trusted it because it's local to him in La Jolla. And so the Niners have an Agascu postural therapist on the staff. That therapist works with Kittle, and Bosa has turned down that and said, "No, I want to do stuff on my own." He said he doesn't want to work with postural therapists. For Christian, he needs to talk to this person. He
Yeah,
needs to,
absolutely.
because he's got postural issues that are creating the injury. He has to fix the posture to give him a better chance of not going through re-injury. So I hope he does that, and I hope that we can follow up on that. And I'll talk to Grant about this. Maybe he can
Yeah,
talk to
definitely.
Christian about it and see. But Rick got back to me this afternoon. A good friend of mine I've known for 20 years plus, and he's somebody that's amazing. He can look at somebody's gait and evaluate this person's very susceptible to a knee injury. 2 weeks later, knee injury. Yeah, he knows what he's doing. And so he speaks to this. He says, this is something Christian's got to do. We'll see if he does. And I think that if he does, it'll help him a lot because it's contributing to the
That's a
injury.
great, I didn't know that, so that's great intel, and I would love if, you can get a hold of someone in the media to actually
Yeah.
ask about that. I'm sure, at least if they know about it, because I think I've actually heard Kittle talking about something like that. I don't know if he,
Yeah.
like, exactly said what the title was, but he's talked about his off-season programming before, and, I'm sure if the resource is available, at this point, Kittle's flying all the way to Germany or sorry, Christian McCaffrey's flying all the way to Germany to try things. You would think that they would exhaust all the options here as well.
Yeah.
Really quickly, I want to say what's up to Tribe, who's always in our chat. Hi, Tribe. And then say hello to Rick. Let's
Okay.
go Niners. Then the problem at this point is CMC is used to tanning, which maybe means overuse. Chris McCaffrey's really tan, and that makes him
Yeah,
more injury prone. I know
I
that
don't know
this
about
I love
that.
this comment is definitely try
Uh,
again.
okay.
I
If
believe in
that
your
were true,
ability.
you would have Achilles problems. No.
um, but really quickly, I different roster moves that just happened today is also Jalen Graham was signed
Love
from
that.
the Washington Commanders practice squad, which people had really good things to say about him earlier on when he was on the 49ers. Mostly like he was not that he was there yet, but that he seemed to have a promising future if the 49ers could invest time in him. How do you feel about Jalen Graham being back on the team,
I
especially with
like
all
it.
the injuries that have happened in that
I
area?
was surprised that they put him on the practice squad. I thought that he was going to make the team in the 53, but linebacker was where they had the biggest roster squeeze because they had to deal with special teams plus the needs on the position itself. So I'm just happy they have him back. With Curtis Robinson getting hurt, they need more linebackers that are knowledgeable in the system. Graham knows the system, and hopefully he gets some time. But it sounds to me like, at least initially, this is about special teams. It is filling the special teams
I
role
was hoping it meant no
that was
more
lost.
Devondre Campbell.
Oh, I would love that. And we've been talking about that for a while. Is can we please get Devondre Campbell off the field? But I don't think that's Jalen Graham. That's D Winters. And so D Winters is going to need more reps, more snaps. Hopefully that transition happens. Part of what the Niners need to do is trust more in their younger players and let them get out in the field. Because you have to be honest with yourself and evaluating the talent and saying, Devondre Campbell isn't getting it done. He needs to be replaced. He needs to get off the field.
Yes.
That's obvious to anyone. They have to do it. Hopefully they will, starting this week.
I hope so as well. Really quickly, I hate to bring it back to the Christian McCaffrey conversation after moving on, but we're getting a lot of comments about it. I kind of agree that I don't agree that when Christian McCaffrey comes back, Jordan Mason should be the running back one, but I do hope that they adapt more of an even model for them both. And I mean, while they're working Christian McCaffrey back, if I'm more talking once he's fully healed. But obviously, when they're working back, I hope that they don't try to overuse him right away. And even once he is back, I think Mason has proven that he is someone who should be getting carries every single game. Jordan Mason right now is the second leading rusher in the NFL. He was the first up until Derrick Henry just passed him on yesterday's game. But Jordan Mason has 447 rushing yards, second leading rusher behind Derrick Henry in the NFL. An incredible stat. One for Kyle Shanahan getting him involved, but two, I think a lot of that is Jordan Mason is an excellent runner, and
Yeah.
it's kind of a shame that he wasn't utilized earlier. Does make me feel like would Christian McCaffrey maybe not be injured if he were to have divided up his carries last year? And
Well, yeah, but let's remember that McCaffrey waved off replacements when they were going to go onto the field.
yeah,
So
that's true. He wanted he
he
wanted to get all
wanted
those
his
targets
stats.
to
He
get his money.
wanted that bag badly.
Yeah,
And he knew he was getting married, so he wanted to be secure in his financial future. I get that. But it comes at a cost, especially when you have an injury history, and that cost is what we're seeing now. Also, we need to remember that Kyle didn't have full faith and trust in Jordan Mason. Then that Kyle isn't the best at talent evaluation to begin with. We can go back in time from what we now know and say that, well, why didn't you play Jordan Mason? You know, Even if Christian McCaffrey were hurt, he wouldn't have played Jordan Mason. He would have
I know,
played.
but I think that's bad on Kyle Shanahan because
It
I think
is.
basic fans were telling him that they thought with the talent that we saw Jordan Mason display in the
Oh, sure.
small bursts that he was given opportunities that he should be on the field. And I think as a coach, whether or not your guy has the plays completely memorized, if that was a problem with Jordan Mason, who knows? But if it was, they're still like have him memorize three, packages, like get him on the field. I
Yeah.
think a smart coach doesn't let talented players sit on the sidelines no matter what.
Well, a
Okay, I
smart
think
coach also has a rotation to protect Christian McCaffrey because
yeah,
McCaffrey has the injury history to begin with. Kyle needs to dial back his desire to win at all costs. And he tends to
yeah,
say, whenever somebody gets hurt, well, that's football. No, That's your choice. You're
Yeah,
the one that kept
you're
him on the
running them
field.
into the ground.
Right. Right.
You're doing that. Okay. I think that my dad tried to try again. The problem is CMC has been running this way his whole life, so trying to change it will take a long time, if at all. Completely agree.
Yeah.
Um,
But you can still do work in therapy where you just change angles slightly, and it makes a huge difference.
or even like maybe he can't in games when you're kind of going off instincts, maybe he's keeping his running style. But if it's a certain like I'm sure that this doctor rehab person that he'd be working with for the posture, he could give him techniques to use in the warm-ups to try to activate whatever muscles he's not using as
Right.
much. They could add stuff into his lifting or training programs to try to balance those things out more, because I agree, um, it's hard at this age to be changing something
Yeah,
that's
to
instinctually,
adjust
but
your
there's
running
other things
style
you
is a
can
big
do to
ask.
try to
Sure.
negate whatever factors are happening when you're in game speed, when you're more slowed down and doing your practices or your stuff that you're doing in the weight room. I think that's when those things can be implemented more.
True,
Um,
but in Christian's case, I would say this also, that your future and your ability to even play is going to depend on making that adjustment to keep your Achilles healthy. If you don't make this adjustment, you're going to rupture your tendon, and that's your career. So
yeah, I don't love
there's a lot of motivation to make that adjustment. I realize what your dad's saying. He's right. He spent a year, or he spent a career running this way, but now here's someone, a medical professional, telling him you can't continue to do this posturally. You're creating the injury on your own. You have to change, and we'll see if he does. But I agree, it's a huge ask to tell a running back you have to change the angle of your leg, your knee, your foot, all of that. But if Christian wants to extend his career, he's going to have to do it.
it. Yeah. And like I said, maybe it's a slow process that doesn't happen right away, but if
Yeah,
there's
yeah, it's
I know for me, I had I fractured my shins and then I had a hip issue, and I don't run at all the way that I used to, but I still am very active. And when I was doing more gym type stuff, I went to PT and like rehab person for my hip, and they gave me like warm up tools to use before doing the movements that I was used to doing, to try
yeah,
to like activate certain muscles that just, because I've lived a life of not like, when I was doing certain movements, other muscles would take over. So like doing these things first called my attention to the muscles that were lesser activated, and I could feel them. So then when I was running or lifting, I could think and feel the muscles that I was actually supposed to be using. And I think that helped a lot. And I don't do it as
it
much as I
does.
should, but when I'm feeling a flare up, I definitely do. And like I said, I don't know if it's completely changed when I'm, you know, running on instinct or just in the gym messing around, but I do think I've noticed a big difference when I utilize those techniques in my warm-ups. It just makes me more cognizant, and just that has helped a ton. So
Yeah,
I'm sure that
the other thing that does is that in your warm up routine, you activate and loosen the entire muscle group that's working to do that action for your body, as opposed to you'll do something that will only work a tendon or will work an Achilles or something like that. It'll work a muscle. And what postural alignment therapy can do is tell you focus on the muscle group in total so that you have all of that working together to support your body and help to cushion the blow of any activity you take on. And that's another thing Christian's going to have to do, is that he's going to have the muscle group taken care of, not just the tendon.
perfect. I want to say shout out to MJW, who said, thanks for the great insight information. Take care. 6 p.m. there. Got to eat and watch the debate. Thank you so much for tuning in with us for a little bit. Make sure to give us a like if you can, and to check out Tom's article. Ninercast is his Twitter handle. His articles are posted on si.com. Is the debate the Kamala, or not Kamala, the
Tim
VP?
Walls.
Well,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
Tim Walls and JD Vance in the
Yeah,
debate tonight.
yeah, yeah. That insane guy.
Not that the
Cool.
vice presidential debates ever had an effect on an election, but you never know.
Yeah. I'm sure it'll be it's sad. It's one of those things, not to get political, but like I feel like certain people watch them and they're like, "Oh, it's funny because they're so deranged." Like when
Yeah.
Trump was talking, and I'm like, if this was like SNL, it would be funny, but this guy is like legitimately running, and some people believe what he's saying,
Yeah.
so that makes it terrifying. Um, but anyways, who is Turner? Because
Bobby
our great
Turner, the
friend
running back,
Tim,
the running back coach.
you're right, you're
Yeah,
right, you're
and
right. I
College Chip
remember.
does right that Mason had issues
True.
with Bobby Turner, where Bobby Turner would say he's not ready yet, and part of that was
Him
Jordan
not
Mason's reads.
being
Part
prepared
of
as
it
a
was
student,
not
right?
knowing the system fully in terms of the pass protection as a back, and that he wasn't fully developed as a receiver. Part of the reason that Mason has emerged is he worked on all of those things to get Turner's approval and to be set up in this position where the Niners believed in him fully at that point. But to your point from earlier, yeah, you can still have those issues, and Bobby Turner may have some reservations, but that doesn't mean that you can't have packages for that player that he does well.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I agree with that. Okay. Moving on because we're talking a lot of injuries, a lot of day-to-day guys. George Kittle, day-to-day, Fred Warner, day-to-day, Chris McCaffrey. Could be next season, could be before the playoffs. Seems like Kyle Shanahan's gonna try to make him go in like 2 weeks, which is
He better
problematic.
not.
I
Yeah,
know.
Christian has to be smart about this. This is his career.
Yeah,
Now,
put
I
your
would say
career
that
first.
now I'm not playing until 2025.
With all this happening, I think that the 49ers are going to make a trade at the before the trade deadline. You and I talked about DJ Jones last week, and we'll talk to maybe some more realistic ones today. But
Okay.
really quickly, because I do think it's breaking news, it's all over Twitter. This morning, Devontae Adams was on the Kay Adams show, and she asked him, she said there was all these rumors about the Raiders wanting to trade him. What were his thoughts and opinions about that? He said he hadn't heard about that. He didn't want to be traded. He didn't know where that was coming from. Well, then about 3 hours later, so 1 hour later for anyone tuning in right now, or 1 hour ago for anyone tuning in right now, it was announced that Devontae Adams himself has requested a trade from the Raiders. Now, of course, 49er fans and probably any team or any fan base that, wants a good player, but has 49ers fans have said, trade Brandon Ayuk for Devontae Adams. This was a conversation that was being had this offseason that I was actually fully game
Yeah, you
for.
said that point blank. You said that.
Yeah. But no
And
one
you
was
were
taking me
right.
seriously then. Uh,
You were
I
absolutely
have
right.
a I have a sneaking terrible feeling that he'll end up going to a mortal enemy team of the 49ers. But sticking with the 49ers now, do you think that this is even like is John Lynch even calling to just see what the deal would be? Are they even
No,
checking in on it?
no.
No.
And part
Who's
of
the
what you need to
opposition?
remember when it's Raiders Niners is Mark Davis refuses to deal with the Niners. He sees them as the backyard enemy, stemming back to the days when they were in Oakland. That he refused to deal Khalil Davis to the Niners, even though they had the best offer on the table. So Davis is not going to deal with the Niners. That's done. He's not going to do it. He
I didn't
refuses.
know that part.
He's the
I didn't
owner.
realize that.
That's there you are.
What
As
I don't can
JM
you
points out in the chat, Adams is from the area. Yeah, he's from East Palo Alto, so it'd be cool to have Devontae back. But Mark Davis will not trade with 49ers. So where will Devontae go? The Jets obviously want to reunite him with Aaron Rodgers. They've got Hassan Reddick, who's clearly they can't deal with. So Reddick to the Raiders, Adams to the Jets. I could see something like that with a pick thrown in. The other possibility I would think is Baltimore. They really need a receiver. They could really use Devontae. If you could pair Lamar Jackson and Devontae Adams, Baltimore takes a big step forward, especially given that Kansas City just lost Rasheed Rice.
I
And
was
the
gonna
other
say, what about
factor
the
with the Raiders is would they trade Devontae to Kansas City? No. Another thing that Davis won't do is trade in division.
okay.
He'll do that on occasion, but he's fundamentally he's against doing that sort of thing.
Now, for people who don't know, why won't he trade with the 49ers? What
Because
is he
he
having?
sees the Niners as the enemy, that the Niners and the Raiders were fighting for the market. The Niners got the edge over the
They
Raiders,
won.
and Mark Davis just took that personally.
Right,
So
right. That's
he
right.
he will
Raiders,
not
get out of here.
deal with the Niners. And Khalil Davis is proof of that. That the Niners offered the most by far, and he refused to trade him here, or Khalil Mack rather, and refused to trade him here, and that was it.
That's
So
so
anybody
frustrating.
with the Niners saying we can get Devontae Adams, no, you can't.
Okay, I didn't
He
know
won't
about that.
do it. He's a
What if
stick in the
they
mud on this stuff. He won't.
what if it wasn't just like Brandon Ayuk? What if it was Brandon Ayuk and
Doesn't
like
matter.
a third round pick or something? There's
Well,
not.
they're asking for a second round pick and more, whatever the more is.
That's what I'm saying. So second,
So
I mean,
would the
a
Niners do
third
that?
and
No,
Brandon Ayuk is
it
basically
doesn't
like a
matter.
first and a third.
Yeah. The Niners could offer Ayuk in a second, and Mark Davis would still say no because it's the Niners.
I hate
We
him.
have to face up to the fact that he's a stick in the mud on this. He will not do it. So just let it go. Devontae's going elsewhere. If I had to predict, I would say he's going to the Jets. And if not the Jets, then Baltimore. I think it's one of those.
Okay. Well, that's disappointing. I hate that.
Yeah, that sucks.
I didn't understand. I didn't know that. I didn't know that tie.
Yeah.
Really quickly before we move on to the next subject, I want to say peace out, JD. He's always in our thing, and then I want to say
Mister.
what's up to Mr. Corey, who's joining us a little bit late. Mr. Corey, did you know that Mark Davis is going to ruin our hopes and dreams and won't? Oh, he doesn't even want Adams, so never mind. He's too good for
Okay.
Adams over here. Um, if not Devontae Adams, which I already didn't think was realistic before I even knew the Mark Davis connection, I just thought that they probably, after doing this entire offseason, Brandon Ayuk weren't going to try to deal with some logistical nightmare to trade him. Uh, who do you think the 49ers will target before the trade deadline? Because there's lots of injuries. Javon Hargrave is another one. Uh, this defense is plagued. Offense has been slow. Feels like they need to add. Do you anticipate the 49ers will add before the trade deadline? And if they do, what position, a player you have in mind?
Well, as I wrote in my column today, they want DJ Jones, but projecting Denver's record at the deadline, I think they'll be 4-5. They won't trade him because they'll say we've still got a chance to be a wild card team, and so DJ Jones will be out. What we need to do is to root for
Bad
Denver
right
to
now, aren't they?
lose. We need Denver to lose, lose, lose.
Yeah, yeah.
They just beat the Jets 10-9 in a really fluky game.
But didn't Bo Nix like play bad? Like they beat the Jets, but like with a bad performance? Or am I
They did.
wrong?
They did. They played badly but still won. And that's bad news for the Niners because it makes it that much less likely that the Niners can get DJ Jones. I think the Niners will make their best effort to try to get him, but if Denver is close to 500, I don't think they're going to move him because they'll need him.
Is
And
there a different player that you think they could
no,
target if not for
no.
DJ Jones?
And that's the other thing I said in the article is you go through it and you say, okay, who are the
Yeah.
other players on bad teams that could be available? And there's nobody. It's really bleak. So the only trade that I could come up with is that they have a need at running back, given that Isaac Guerrero isn't showing much, and you can't just have Jordan Mason because if he
Trumbo
goes
was
down, they're
surprising.
in real trouble. So I had them trading a seventh round pick to New England for Jermichael Hasty because Hasty used to play for the Niners and knows the system.
Did you see that Hasty got in the game because freaking the Patriots #1 running
Yeah,
back that they were hyping up all week fumbled the ball and then they took him out? And
right. And so Hasty played, and I bet that triggered something in Kyle. I would think that he's going to foul that away.
long
So
lost
I would
Southern Kiss.
expect that the
I
Niners
know
are going
that
to
guy.
look at Matt Breida in free agency of just signing him off of the street, or Jermichael Hasty in a very late draft pick trade. Seventh rounder for Hasty, I could see that. But
Okay.
a trade that would make a lot of impact, probably not, because the bad teams don't have players available that the Niners would target.
Yeah, it's you mostly I'm because when I was thinking of trade candidates, I was mostly thinking on that defensive line because
Yeah.
I do think that they could still be performing better. What about safety? I know Malik Mustafa played more last game. How did you feel about him? Obviously, right out of the gate, he gave up a big play, but then he had some highlight plays after that. How did you
Yeah.
feel with his
He had
first?
the bad play in space where he couldn't make the tackle on his own.
Yeah,
That was tough. But as the game progressed, he played better. And
got
I
better,
think
right?
that
Yeah.
hopefully he can build on that. I would like to see Mustafa take over as the starter, and then Hufanga can come back once he's physically healthy enough to do it. But I think they need to work
That's
in
another one. Like
Mustafa
they gotta
regardless, is that Mustafa needs to be part of the rotation.
really quickly, just to like, because all this goes back to your article. I feel like Hafunga is another example of you cannot rush these injuries because he, on the same leg that he had his knee injury, now has injured his ankle. And to me, that says potentially he didn't feel fully stable on that knee, even if it felt like good enough to do the warm ups. Maybe he didn't feel fully like in football shape. And so you're not as secure when you're planting, and so you're putting more pressure on that lower half of your leg because your knee isn't as stable. And now he has an ankle injury. He's also day to day, but it's just like, I wish the 49ers and their training staff, I hope a media member asked, because I know that they recently had turnover with the lead guy who was the
Yeah,
trainer there.
yeah, they changed the staff
Um,
around a little bit. Yeah,
yeah, and I
yeah.
think
So we'll
his
see.
the guys that were working under him, I think, are still the guys there now. So you would assume not that much has changed, but they've just really struggled with the injury bug this year. And it feels like
Well, yeah, part of
someone needs
that's
to tell them they
mileage.
can't be rushing
Yeah,
these players back.
yeah, but part of it is just these guys have played a ton of games because when you're consistently good every single year and you go to the NFC Championship or the Super Bowl, you're playing a lot of games. You're playing an additional season basically over those 4 years.
Yeah.
Mr. Corey says,
DeForest
"What about the
Buckner,
Browns trading as Conklin?"
yeah.
Um, Kyle wants to have linemen that have experience in the system. He typically doesn't trade for linemen mid-season because of that.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, Buckner suffered a lot with injury last year, and then this year, he's been on the injury report. I don't know if it's affected his playing status, but he's at least not been able to participate fully in practices.
Yeah,
So I don't know if he's the same Buckner that he was a couple of years ago. What do you feel about the Buckner situation?
I think
Also, the
he's.
Colts
I
with
think he's too good for Indianapolis
yeah,
to give him up. I don't think that they would be willing to trade him.
yeah.
And it's not like Buckner would be jumping up and down to go back to the 49ers after what they did.
Now that Joe Flacco is starting, it feels like the Colts maybe have some optimism to them.
Could be. Yeah, yeah. Well, you look at what Flacco did last year. He helped Cleveland out, and
He's like
we'll see what
40 years
Flacco
old.
can do
How
now.
impressive.
It's pretty amazing that he's been as successful as he has.
Yeah. I feel like he's lived a really cool life. And then another comment from Mr. Corey, really quick, just to run through these.
Yep.
Yeah, Grendo does
Yep.
not look promising. I didn't expect him to. He wasn't good in college. He performed well at the combine.
Well, yeah, as I said at the time he was drafted, they drafted a track guy who plays football. You need the reverse. You need a football guy who ran track. Because Garendo was a sprinter and a long jumper in high school. He was a state champion. Great track guy. But you drafted this guy to be your kickoff returner primarily, and he runs up the back of a blocker and fumbles the ball as a result. This is the guy you want?
No.
It's just, I think Garendo is going to end up being the bust of this draft. Otherwise, it's a really good draft. It's just that Garendo was not the right pick. It's kind of just you're chasing stats. You're going after the combine guys, and when
Yeah.
Kyle has gone after
You
combine,
need to stop doing
especially
that.
speed,
Look at the film.
yeah, well, yeah, you have to watch the games, not the combine.
Yeah. I completely agree.
And you
You
look
said
at
this
Garendo and
during
you say, "Oh, he's so fast! And, look what he's doing." Yeah,
this
he's great in space, but he doesn't know how to play.
this was something
He's a
you said.
track guy playing football. That's the issue.
I remember you talking about this during the combine, being like, there's
Yeah,
going to be guys
yeah,
who impress in the combine, but you have to, and it's not that you can't notice that and appreciate it, but then you have to reflect on the tape and are these things reflective of each other? Because you can train for the combine specifically, and that is not the sport of football that you're training for. That's a whole
no,
different beast.
No.
And Guerrero seems to be good at stop and start speed and whatever else, but actual football game, not good.
Nope.
And it's kind of a shame that he was drafted because I think that was the book on him even during that time. So
Yeah.
I'm not surprised with how he's done.
He didn't look that good at Louisville, so they drafted him to be the speed guy. And
Yeah,
when you draft Jacob Cowing, you've already got the speed guy. You've got the guy that has football talent and acceleration. He's the guy you want. What I didn't understand was doubling down on speed when he didn't need to.
definitely. Now, I did want to say because I feel like a lot of this has been a little bit more negative. I
Yeah,
had
I'm sorry about
some
that. That's me.
no. I mean, it's this season is plagued with injuries. It's not you. It's just unfortunate with what's been
Yeah,
happening.
it's just
But I
it is
did.
what it
I
is.
saw like some stats. These were just on uh Twitter by John Chapman. But I thought that they were interesting, and I wanted to give us something exciting to talk about. And obviously, much like the combine isn't representative of how you're going to compete in games, I don't totally believe that, all stats are the end all be all. I kind of think you can find stats to prove whatever you want. We've seen that with kind of how spreadsheet used to cover Jimmy Garoppolo. But what I will say about these stats is when the ones that I'm about to read off is I do think the play on the field is pretty representative of how well these stats say that these players are. Not saying that they're as phenomenal, but I'm saying I do feel like these are highlights from the season so far.
Yeah.
These players. So Brock
Okay.
Purdy is first, and I guess right now Brock Purdy's on pace to throw for 5,000 yards this season. Or yeah, five. Is that wrong? You lifted up your eyes.
No, I'm just saying that's impressive.
Yeah,
I
he
wasn't
leads
doubting it.
he leads the
That's the
NFL right
projection.
now
Yeah.
with 1,100 yards. He leads the NFL in yards per pass attempt with 9.3. He has the most deep completions in the league. Deep completions are 20 plus yards, and he has 9 of them. And some of these are like a Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy stat, obviously, because
Yeah.
Shanahan is scheming some of these guys open, or
And
not
talent
some,
at the
all of them.
receivers. Yeah.
Yeah, and on the receivers. Um, and then he also has the most deep passing yards in the NFL with 292 yards right now. And then the both of those, the 20 plus yards completions and the 290 yards deep passing, both of those could be even higher because Brock Purdy also leads the league in the most dropped passes down the field in the NFL, which is crazy because he leads the league in the most passes down the field, and he's had even more that are dropped, which is insane.
And
When you think
normally the
about that.
Niners don't do
He
that. They're a
also,
sure-handed receiving core normally. Historically, they were among the league leaders in fewest drop passes.
oh, really?
Yeah.
So hopefully that's one of those things that
Yeah, so it's once you get
they've
into a
gotten out of their
flow that
system in
Ayuk won't
September.
drop as many balls and they'll be better off. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
see.
Um, and then most first downs in the NFL right now. And then that's not even taking into account. I wrote this down, but I've been really impressed with Brock Purdy's legs in the last 2 games. I think the first two I was kind of worried because I felt like in the playoffs last year, Purdy did utilize his legs, and I thought it was a huge asset for him coming out the first 2 games. He was more of a statue back there, and I felt like that hindered them. These last 2 games, you haven't seen that. You've seen him moving around, not in the way that he's missing opportunities every time he moves, but usually when the pocket is breaking down or maybe receivers aren't getting open, he can buy himself some time or buy the wide receiver some time to get open or himself to see those guys who are already open if he hasn't gone through his checkdowns yet and the pocket
Or
is
run
breaking
for a
down.
first down if
Yeah,
that's
run.
available to him.
That kept him alive in a couple of those drives just
Yeah,
on Sunday.
yeah.
So
I like his judgment. I think that he's making good, quick decisions in terms of when to escape the rush and get out of the pocket and when to run. And
yeah,
that comes from just playing the games. And
yeah.
so I think that Brock is learning at a quick pace, and that's a great thing to see. I loved all the deep targets last week. I thought that was a great use of
I
the
like that
receiving
too.
talent. Part of that though is you're playing New England, so
Yeah,
you
is
have to
it
remember who you're playing, and you can't expect Brock to have games like that again. Part of that's the Patriots, but I also like what Kyle did in his game calling, in that there were four guys who had passes of 38 yards or more, and Mason had a 24 yarder plus the penalty on Kittle with the, the semi bogus holding call at the end zone. So he's distributing the ball and he's using players in new ways. So Juwan Jennings, for example, last year was basically a third down specialist. Now Juwan is more featured and he featured him deep. And I think that that helps open up the defense to then create more room to get more passes in there. So I like what Kyle is doing in spreading the wealth and using players in unexpected ways. That can only help him.
I completely agree. It's good for you to remind me that it was against the Patriots because I was really happy to see Brock being more aggressive, going down the field. It felt like that was a criticism after not the Patriots game, but the game before when he missed Ayuk on that deeper pass down the field, and people are kind of like, okay, why are you not taking that opportunity? Where this game, you saw him taking those opportunities, even if maybe he shouldn't have, but I'd rather have someone who makes a risky throw every once in a while and shows that he trusts his receivers and trusts himself to get the ball there than someone who's hesitant and scared to throw that pass and misses it when it is available. And something that I liked about Brock in previous seasons was I felt like he was usually pretty smart and calm and made the right decision, but every once in a while you'd see some gunslinger aspects to him. And I thought that that was actually a good change of pace for the system to not not have that take over, but have it occur every once in a while. I want my quarterback to be confident
Uh,
in himself.
yeah,
And so
you
I was
want the
excited to
confidence
see that
and you
back.
want the unpredictability of going
Yeah.
deep or shallow. Um, Carl Chipto says Patriots defense is above average. That's true, but Jonathan Jones came into the game questionable, so he had a bad wheel to begin with, and he's somebody they could pick on. His backup wasn't that good. It's something that I pointed out in my game preview was that the Niners would look to target Jones specifically because he wasn't fully healthy, and the Patriots didn't really have the depth to deal with that. Christian Gonzalez did a good job for the most part throughout the game, but Jones was burned, and it's because he wasn't fully healthy. So that's why I say that. But no, I agree with you that normally the Patriots defense is better, but Jones being hurt made them quite vulnerable deep. Um, Lemire asks, "How special performance? So shall the Niners season go?" Thoughts? They are now 32nd in the NFL in special teams,
Yeah,
and we have to say, okay, why? And part of it, I think, is they don't spend enough time on it. Kyle doesn't want to spend the time on special teams. He wants to focus on his offense. I think that's part of it. I also think that the coaching isn't up to par, obviously, and that they need to do more. It's just what's what they can't do is status quo. They can't just roll out the same coach, the same players, spend the same time on it, and then say, "Gee, our special teams suck." No kidding. Change things. Do
yeah.
something different.
It's
It's just
under Kyle Shanahan,
bad.
like this entire regime. Even he fired the past special teams coach too. So what scares me
Yeah,
is this is
Brian
a consistent
Schneider, he
problem.
came from Seattle. And
Yeah,
Seattle was good back in the day, but yeah, when he was coaching the Seahawks, they weren't that great. And
yeah,
you look at what's happened with the Niners, it's just I have to question, how often are they working the special teams? How often are they actually getting a chance to practice and operate? And what are the schemes? Look at all the mistakes. Guerrero running up the back of his blocker, that's something that should be a basic thing a coach tells him not to do. Yet they do it because it's the Niners special teams. Yeah, as I wrote in my article, they all need to take the Hippocratic oath. First, do no harm. They
I
have
completely
to,
agree.
guys,
Um,
stop hurting this team. Just even if all you do is fair catch and make tackles for stops for returns of 5 to 10 yards or less,
Not worth it.
just do that. But
Yeah,
they've had missed field goals, a blocked punt returned with the game on the line for 38 yards. and a fumble on a kickoff return. It's just unacceptable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, speaking of that, Brock Purdy also, he had a red zone interception. He had a fumble last week and a fumble the week before that. So protecting the ball needs to be something that's stressed to the entire team right now. But definitely special teams has let us down, which is not a surprise. Um,
Has to
with
get fixed.
Lemir's comment, I am wondering, like, if he's asking, does this win, do you feel like it gives you more hope for the 49ers going forward? Like,
Well,
are you more or
my
less
read on
confident?
what he's saying is that the special teams can be so intertwined with wins and losses that it can cost the Niners the season. If that's what he's saying, yeah, if that is Lemire, let us know what your intent was. But that's how I'm reading your comment. Is you're saying that special teams is so bad that it threatens the Niners' entire season to be derailed. I agree.
I agree too. Um, Someone says Ayuk to the Chiefs.
Yeah, they
People are
won't do
not happy with
that given the
Ayuk.
Super Bowls. But yeah,
People are not happy with Ayuk's performance. I'm hoping that that football rust has washed off of him, and coming into October, he will start to perform better really quickly back on special teams. Snyder had some great special teams for the Seahawks. Moody has been really good since entering the league. I don't know about that. I would not say really good. I would say really bad, actually.
I wouldn't say
um,
bad. I'd say he's average. The problem is that in high pressure situations, he folds, and that's the last thing you need from your kicker.
Yeah, like he gets scared and he like it's to me it's not about distance. Like he can make a 20-yard field goal and he can make a 65-yard field goal. It's just, is the game on the line? Is it an important situation? Or does it not, like, are the 49ers up and comfortable and it's not a high stress game? He's gonna make it no matter what. If
Right.
No matter how short it is or how easy it is, if it's a stressful situation, I'm scared it's not gonna go in. But then 49ers should always punt the ball out of bounds and not field it on returns. That's kind of what you were saying, right,
Agreed.
Tom?
Yeah, I
Like
agree
this
with that, and I
prevent
think
the
that
mistake.
Wishnowsky is good at that. That he's good at punting the ball inside the 10 and getting the backspin on it to stop, or he's getting the ball out of bounds. He can do that. It's just that you've got to find a way to limit the um, the exposure of your return teams. Tough to do in kickoffs unless you just blast it into the end zone every time. Moody, I'll give him credit for that, does that consistently.
Yeah,
But punt returns, they have to do a better job because the punt return against in the Rams game, you're punting the ball game in the line and you punt it in the middle of the field. What are you doing? And that gets back to coaching. Is just the coach should get in there and say that the last thing you should do is punt the ball in the middle of the field to give them an opportunity to run it back. Sure enough, what happens? It just that's bad coaching. I realize that Schneider was better in Seattle, but you look at his performance here and it's lacking. There's basics in coaching that aren't there.
yeah, definitely. Um, I'm a Michigan fan, and Moody was a front runner kicker there too. He only lost like 4 games in 4 years. So the
Yeah,
kicks he made in Michigan was killing people. So that's kind of interesting. Like, because Michigan wasn't in high stakes games, he performed better there because the pressure was less
yeah,
immense. Is that kind
but
of what
he
this
did
means?
have the pressure kick against TCU where he kicked like what 62-yarder or something like that. So he can on occasion do it and come through, but in the NFL, his history has been that if it's a high pressure situation, he's more at risk of missing.
Definitely.
Can't do that.
Um, we can't have a special teams blunder or three per week and expect to win. I agree, and I think that's why, although I think the Patriots win, a win is a win in the NFL. You need to start stacking wins. It was imperative for confidence going forward to get that
Agreed.
win. But I also don't want to overstate how much it means, because there was critical errors on every side of the ball, in my opinion, that could have prevented the win if the 49ers were going up against a better opponent.
Yeah, well, you look at it and see Mason made 2 fumbles and recovered both.
Dude,
Purdy
it's so
threw the
good that Chris
interception, but
McCaffrey
it was
has
late.
5 lateral Achilles
And yeah,
tendonitis, or Mason would never see the field again. Kyle's
right.
already sitting there like, "I hate you."
Yeah, yeah. And Grant says it. The Niners let the Patriots hang around. Absolutely right. A
Yeah.
better team would have taken advantage of those turnovers and turned them into points and made the game closer.
Not even a
But
better team.
because the Niners made those mistakes, they didn't. They should have had the Patriots blown out first half.
The week before, the Cardinals beat the Patriots stronger than the 49ers did, and now we're talking about the Cardinals game like, "Oh, this should be an easy win for the 49ers to go against." It's like, "Okay, well, how come they were so much more convincing when facing the same
Yeah,
opponent?" And that's been a problem even dating back to last year for this 49ers team. I remember Brock Purdy actually doing an interview where he said it was important for him to start being able to put away teams at the end of games instead of just having the lead and then kind of hoping that they can ride out the last quarter or last 2 quarters. And that's not something that they've been able to tackle down. And I won't put that all on Brock Purdy, although he was the one that like called attention to that. But that's been a problem with just Kyle Shanahan as a head coach and coordinator, in my opinion.
yeah. And Grant had the conversation with Ira Miller back a little while ago, where Ira pointed to it precisely and just said, "Kyle can't finish games." And that's exactly it. Why can't Kyle finish games? Because he calls passes instead of runs when you can put the game away. He gets too cute.
I
Yeah,
said, like
the
when Brock
Niners
Purdy,
had the interception in the Super Bowl. What did they do?
yeah,
They threw. They
yeah.
got the ball in to start the second half, and the first play is this convoluted pass to Jennings that ends up being like a 9-yard loss, which then forces them to pass, and it all snowballs. Kyle has to understand that you need to run first to then set up your ability to run or pass in the next play. When you are that far ahead, that's part of how you finish games. Yeah,
Exactly.
I've pointed to this before is that even in comebacks, it can make sense to run the ball if that's what the defense is giving you.
Well, if
So,
you look at the
my
Rams,
example of that was, you go back to the catch game. The Niners' winning drive was basically Lenville Elliott running. Lenville Elliott, who's Lenville Elliott? He's their running back, not well thought of at all. And he has these big runs because Dallas was in prevent. And so Wall said, okay, we're going to run on you. And they ran the ball, from inside the 10 to the 50 because of Lenville Elliott. And then that set up the rest of the passes to win the game. It's take what the defense gives you and know what you need to do in a given situation. Kyle is not a good situational mind. He's great at reading what specific play can work against a defense, but he's not necessarily great at saying that in this situation I need to call X
he's
because
also
he's
not
too tuned in to what's the play that can work rather than what's the call the team needs to win.
he's also not great at just self-assessment in general. I was when you first started talking, I was going to call back just to the Rams game that just happened and them running the ball, but you outdid yourself with the explanation bringing calling back Bill Walsh, and you would think that Kyle would look back at these tapes that he has and learn from the iconic history of this franchise. But Kyle's been questioned about that specifically and has admitted publicly that he doesn't even watch those or think there's anything he could take away because the game is so
Uh,
different now, which just kind of
that's something that drives me crazy. Bill
gives you an
Walsh
insight into
won
his mind,
championships.
which is disappointing that
Very.
you, just a fan, can take
And
valuable
recite that.
lessons from the
Yeah.
history of the game that you remember watching. And Kyle has all this information at his fingertips and has just decided that it's not important.
Yeah,
So,
it's really frustrating as someone that covered the team in the Walsh era to know that I saw what worked. You
yeah.
know, and that's the thing. It's not hard. It's not rocket science. It's do
But
what
Kyle
Walsh did.
only reflects
Do
back
what
on
Walsh
what
did
worked
as
for
a
him and his dad.
GM. Do what Walsh did in play calling. You will win championships if you've got a good enough roster. And Kyle goes against Walsh, maybe intentionally. I don't know, but there's some key lessons that Walsh has as a GM and a coach that Kyle goes in the opposite direction and hurts the team. Don't pay for past performance. He did. Here's Christian McCaffrey getting guaranteed money and not playing. And
Yeah.
goes 180 degrees against Walsh.
Yeah.
Run
Absolutely.
when you need to finish the game. He passes 180 degrees against Walsh. Stop
It's
doing these things. Follow the guy that won rings.
it's kind of
So
hilarious to
frustrating for a fan that goes back that far to see that and say, learn from what worked.
yeah, look at those lessons that are present in your own franchise. But instead, he's stubborn and seems to only look at works for him and maybe his dad. Although someone in the comments did say that he should look, he's not going to look at Bill Walsh, who's an incredible person to take valuable coaching lessons from. But let's say he thinks poorly about Walsh for whatever reason. He was only running a lemonade stand around here, Tom. So
Oh yeah,
let's we don't
yeah.
we don't need
Let's
to
be
do
clear
that.
about these things,
But even
Ashley.
if he's gonna look at his own dad, he's like not taking valuable advice. It's very feels like Kyle Shanahan likes to do the opposite of what he thinks other people want him to
You know,
do. Because
Kyle
if he
wants
can
credit
win
for
his
doing
way,
Kyle
then it
stuff.
means more to him, which
Yeah.
is never going to get him
Kyle
a win.
Kyle will do what he did and what his dad did, and anything else is suspect in Kyle's mind.
This is the key. This is the key.
Yeah,
Mr. Corey
Mr.
says
Corey's
Kyle
got it.
doesn't want anyone
Yeah,
else to get the credit
that's
but
it.
him and his father. And
Bingo.
I think until he gets over that, you're not going to win the game because Andy Reid, any iconic coach, whether or not they mean it or not, they'll at least publicly say they needed the quarterback to be excellent. They needed the players to execute, and they needed all their defensive coordinators, their assistant coaches, all minds on deck in order to become the powerhouse that it takes to win a Super Bowl because lots of teams are good, but it takes good and luck and great minds all to win the biggest game. And it feels like Kyle Shanahan wants to do it in the most difficult way possible for whatever
Well,
reason.
it's not necessarily that. It's just it's the way that he trusts because it worked for his dad. And so I've seen this work for dad. I'm going to make it work for me. That's the mindset. The problem with that is that if you don't have a granular attention to detail, you can fail for those detailed reasons. You can have 9 unblocked pass rushers on blitzes in the Super Bowl and lose. Granular attention to detail. You can have a punt returner who tries to pick up the ball instead of falling on it. Granular attention to detail. Stuff like that can make all the difference in championship games.
Yeah. I understand the point, I guess, of these comments is just to say that he's doing well, but I do always get frustrated because Purdy isn't better than Mahomes this year, but
Oh no.
he's doing great. Um, and
It shows how well he's playing, that
it's
he's playing
exciting
well.
to acknowledge
He
that he's
took
having
full
a good
advantage
year.
of playing New England, and he did
Yeah.
well there. And so yeah, I like the progress that I'm seeing from Brock. I like the confidence that I'm seeing from Brock, and I like that he's adjusting to mistakes and fixing them. That's all good positive signs for Brock going forward.
Yes. And then this is a comment I actually got on my most recent game reaction, not from Mr. Corey, but from someone else who was commenting on the 49ers' lack of ability to close out games. And they were saying kind of the same thing. Well, oh, in order to win, they just have to get up by so much. And it's like at this point, the offense is, I mean, they are struggling in the red zone with getting touchdowns, but they're scoring at least field goals on most of their offensive drives.
Yeah.
At least in the last game against the Patriots, the defense was very good. Maybe not as good the second quarter once Fred Warner went out, but I just think that this is pretty unrealistic when you're going to obviously face a high-powered offense and a tough and physical defense, whoever it is in the Super Bowl, and expecting that you need to get up by more than 14, more than 10 points in order to actually win the game. It's like, no, you just need to coach better at that point.
Yeah.
You can't say,
Yeah.
I have to be up by
You
30 or
can't say,
I'm not
gee,
going to win.
we need to be up by 30 or we've got no chance at winning this
Yeah,
game.
like it's like, well,
What?
then don't go to the Super Bowl then.
No, that can't be it. But part of this is just that Kansas City knows how to close games, and the Niners don't. And that's
Yeah.
Andy Reid versus Kyle Shanahan. And the other factors where it's versus Kyle Shanahan is like Brett Veach, their GM, way better than Kyle. Andy Reid, better than Kyle. Defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo, better than whoever the Niners have. It's just in every organizational matchup they win, beyond just who the players are.
Yes. Well, we're going to close this out. I know it's Tuesday, so it's a little bit early to ask you, but do you predict that the 49ers beat the Cardinals going forward and
Yeah,
that
yeah,
this
I
win
think
is a little
so.
bit?
Right now I have them at 31-17 over Arizona. Is part of the problem for the Cardinals is just Washington just put up 42, and you look at some of the tape from that game, and it's just Buda Baker is an all-world safety. He's great, and the other 10 guys in the Arizona defense are just imposters. It's just
Yeah. Buda
not
Baker
getting
is
it done,
really great,
guys.
and they haven't
You can't
been able
win
to.
with one player, and that's what Arizona has right now. Is they've got one fantastic safety and 10 other guys who are just guys.
No names, yeah. Now, the scary thing is, I felt this way going against the Rams, but I do think, hopefully, I'll say, I don't know if this is fair. I think if Fred Warner plays, you're going to see a good defense, and if he doesn't, I'm scared. I'm scared to see what this team is with no Fred Warner and no Dre Greenlaw.
That'll be a problem because James Conner has had success against the Niners in the past in the run game, and he had over 100 yards last week. It's just they didn't convert anything into points and opportunities. And the other problem is Kyler is going to scramble around back there, and the Niners are not good at containing a quarterback. They
Yeah, they're
don't
not good against the
maintain the
run, let
edges to
alone.
push him back inside. And so I think that if they have the usual problem of not holding the edge against Kyler, that he's going to burn them for some big runs. And unlike Jalen Hurts, he can scramble out of a pocket and find Marvin Harrison Jr. or whoever else they've got open in a scramble drill. So I think that Kyler can do some damage. It's just that Arizona can't stop the Niner offense. That's really the issue in that
I agree. I'm thinking it's going to be a win, definitely. Um, Bonus topic really quickly because I was thinking about yesterday's game. If Sala gets fired and or if Mike McDaniel gets fired at the end of the year, do you think either of them make their way back to the 49ers next year?
I could see Sala coming back. I don't know about Mike McDaniel. I think that he kind of burned a few bridges with Kyle.
He
I
had
don't
some
think
bad
that
blood
Kyle
on
is
some of the
going to
podcasts.
want to come back or want to bring him back. I don't think that'll happen.
I
But
don't know if
Sala
this is
could
fair.
because there's a lot of respect for Sala in the building. He's a proven great defensive coordinator. They know the system works with him. The players trust and believe in him. So does Kyle. So I think that can all fit. It depends on what does Nick Sorensen do, what does Staley do. We'll have to see how this season plays out. But I think that that's in the thought process for the Niners is that if Sala is let go in New York, that I could see Kyle reaching out to him and
Yeah,
saying, "We'd
that'll
love to
fix
have you
that
back."
defense. Mr. Corey says, "What did McDaniel do to Kyle?" I don't know if I agree that it would prevent Kyle from bringing McDaniel back because I think he's so resourceful. I don't know if McDaniel would want to come back, but potentially he would. Uh, what I'm referring to is there was multiple interviews and then also a podcast that was pretty detailed where basically hinted to the fact that he thought he was silenced and hidden from the media because he had a lot of creative ideas and Kyle Shanahan didn't want him to get promoted and leave. And so a lot of other people got opportunities before he did because Kyle really valued keeping him on the team. And it's Mike McDaniel's impression that if he would have gotten more shine earlier, maybe he could have left the nest sooner. I don't know if that's
Potentially, yeah.
fair,
I
but
think
that's
that
kind of what I
that's
took away.
part of it. There's also personal behavior issues that held McDaniel back. We had a problem drinking, but
Yeah, I remember
beyond
that
that, though,
years and years ago
McDaniel
at this
said
point.
things where he basically said that I invented these exceptionally creative concepts in the offense, and I didn't get any credit for it. Kyle took the credit for it. Kyle's not going to sit well with that, even if it's
Yeah.
true.
Um, then we're gonna close it out here because that was the final game. But I just wanted to read my dad's last comment. I think he must be behind where we are because he's talking about Jake Moody, and I love how fired up he is about that. I bet he's a little behind when we were talking about
Oh,
Jake Moody. I
I
don't think he
wish
needs
that
to
could
be fired.
happen.
I think he needs some psychological trainings and under pressure has to keep making those kicks, and maybe it's something that as the years goes on, he trusts himself and his leg more
Yeah,
in those high pressure situations. Like the more he can put himself in those positions and actually execute and make the kick, the more he's going to trust himself to later on. Is
Yeah,
I
that's
assume the
that's my
49ers hope.
take too. Yeah,
Yeah,
what Moody needs is time and experience. He needs to go through that and know what he has to do if he does miss a kick in a game, how to come back mentally and make the next one, and how to recover from a bad game and play well the next week. And that's the kind of thing that only happens by playing. And the fact of the matter is that he was picked in the third round. He was picked for cap reasons
yeah,
because Robbie Gould wanted $6 million plus, and Kyle said, go to Chicago, goodbye. And we're going to draft a kicker to replace you, and we're going to have a kicker long term, dirt cheap. And so Moody is here for the cap hit. Is that you only pay a third rounder, I don't know what, 600-700K, something like that. So, or maybe 1 million. But whatever it is, it's just look, he's here because he's cheap. Gould is gone because he was very expensive. Kyle wanted the cap room, and Kyle is going to give Moody all the time he needs to become a reliable NFL kicker. And
yeah.
I believe that one day he will be, but until then, we're going to sweat it out. Is what it
Yeah, with
is.
the resources he gave up, unfortunately, I feel like he's on the team for a while now.
Yeah,
We
he isn't
definitely
going anywhere.
created something in the comments. Some people are saying it's not that big of a deal. Other people are freaking out about it. I've tried to mellow myself down about it. I did last year predict that we would lose the Super Bowl because of Jake Moody, and then I still feel like that happened. So obviously there was
Yeah,
like
but he
100
was
other
one
reasons.
of many cooks,
Yeah, Chris McCaffrey fumbled. Kyle
not
didn't know the
just him.
rules. A
Yeah,
million and one reasons. But it's a new year. Hopefully the 49ers can win this game and just try to get to the freaking playoffs at this point, because I don't feel like it's fair to have them in the Super Bowl conversation. Even around the league, I've heard when watching other streams and listening to ESPN rankings and stuff like that, like
mhm.
49ers are falling down people's boards fast. And in my opinion, this was the easy part of their schedule. So
It is.
hopefully they just took a while to warm up and everyone's in full football shape now and actually going to perform. And the injuries is something I don't know if you can't control, but hopefully we can have Grant or someone in the media ask about what's going on there. And injury luck was a huge reason the 49ers made it as far as they did last year.
Yeah,
Hopefully
agreed.
they've gotten it all out of control. I would not push Christian McCaffrey, but that's just me. Tom, I'm looking forward to talking to you next week. Thank you
It'll be
so
great.
much for
Thanks,
joining
Ashley.
me. And everyone, like I said, a big portion of this show, especially the beginning part, talking about the injuries, Christian McCaffrey, that was all taken from Tom's article. So make sure you read that because there's way more details there, trade deadline, all that talk, which we're going to do a lot more of. I think the actual trade deadline is at the end of
November
October.
4th.
Oh, November
November
4th.
4th.
Okay. So we have about a month to see if maybe the Broncos stop doing as well, and maybe they'll be more inclined to trade a guy like DJ Jones. It was important for us to talk to Tom because he crushed our dreams of Devontae Adams, but that was never realistic to
Sorry,
begin with.
guys.
Thank you so much for joining me, Tom, and thank you everyone
Thank
in the
you, Ashley.
comments. We really appreciate it. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Even comment. I think that helps too. I've heard. So I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. Drink extra water because it's hot as hell here. So bye. Thank you so much.
Take care, everybody.